The interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. In front of me I have Micheal Mansmann, born on August 6, 1984, served in Operation Iraqi Freedom with the U.S. Army. He achieved the rank of E4, a specialist, and we are recording this on August 2nd, 2012 in Clemson, South Carolina. My name is Daniel Mack, and I'm conducting the interview. No relation. So, Mr. Mansmann, would you please tell me why you decided to enter the service?
Well, 9/11 was my senior year, and it was obviously, one of the most horrific events that we've had in our generation, and so that call to duty, so to speak, kind of stuck with me as I entered college. And after 2 years of college, I decided that I did want to join and kind of make that commitment. So I joined the Army on April 2005, left for basic on August 21st or 22nd, and completed 16 weeks of basic training and AIT together. It was called OSUT, which is One Station Unit Training, at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Graduated in 2005, in December 2005, and then was assigned to 1st Cav Brigade, 1st Cav Division at Fort Hood, Texas.
Alright, so what did you go through at Fort Hood? How long was that? What did it take? What were the sequences, people you met there?
It was good. It was the largest base in the U.S. for a reason. It's freaking huge. So there's lots of stuff to do. The actual base from east to west covered 3 different cities between Harker Heights, Colleen, and Copper's Cove. So there actually had 2 airfields, one on each side of the base. So when we first got there, we were at one airfield, and then before we left, even that same year, because I got there in January '06, and we deployed in October '06. So we had a bunch of moving around to do, lots of stuff. It was definitely busy, and learning how to apply my job, because I was artillery. I was a 13 Fox, which was a forward observer, fire sports specialist by their name, and being attached to aviation was interesting because you're taught to, that you're going to be on the ground, calling for fire, doing a lot more high impact, high energy stuff, and then you're like, okay, well, instead of using cannons, and our artillery guns, you're going to be using Apaches. So I was like, that, sounds cool. So it was definitely an adjustment, trying to have to learn the capabilities of airframes and different software you use, because you're not just calling in a radio and then you have a spotter. You're figuring out exactly what grid it's at, and then sending that directly to a pilot. So it was definitely a learning experience that AIT did not prepare me for. But overall, it was I met some really great friends at Fort Hood while I was there before we deployed, and carried them through deployment and after.
That's great. Is there did you choose that path, or were you assigned to it?
I was assigned that path.
All right. Let's talk about your deployment. You deployed in '06 to where?
We were deployed to Camp Taji in Baghdad, Iraq. We got there and replaced 4th ID. Kind of just took up their shot here. This is a map of Camp Taji, mainly the airfield. There's a nice, beautiful cap patch painted on the airfield right there. But so you land in here, come across, you have the entranceway, and this building right here was where I worked. I slept in one of these trailers every day, but yes, this was headquarters for 1st Air Cav Brigade, 1st Cav Division, and you can see got helicopter parking over here, flight line, all that good stuff. DFAC was here. There's actually 2 DFACs on this base, but yeah, that's where I spent the majority of 15 months.
Can you what building did you call it?
This was Brigade headquarters.
The one on the left?
The DFAC, the dining facility. Sorry.
Okay.
Dining facility. So, Chow Hall.
And did you, where around the base was interesting? I mean, where around the base was there a lot of action?
If you zoom out a bit. All right. This is the border of the base. The base is absolutely huge. Only about the lower left quadrant is what is populated by U.S. forces. The lower right quadrant is populated by Iraqi army forces, and then the north is just blown out shelters, and there's some police dog training and stuff up there, but that's also where the artillery cannons were positioned. So if we had outgoing fire, it was coming from the north side of the base. But this major, you can see there's lots of stuff over here. This route right here is MSR Tampa, and they would shoot into the airfield all the time. They weren't very accurate. It was explained to me that it's the equivalency of walking up to a really tall wall and throwing rocks over it. You're not sure what you're going to hit, but if you throw enough rocks, you're going to hit something. So, just anti-Iraqi forces, anti-American forces who were driving up and down this route all the time. They had the ability to pull off to the side on a dirt road where it downslopes. So they'd have some protection from the tower gunners who are positioned every couple hundred meters or so. They were able to get off a couple rounds of mortars, rockets, usually mortars because they're fast. Throw the tube in the bed of their truck and then just peel off down the dirt road or on the asphalt and head either north or south. It's a major highway, so you can get away pretty quick. So response time was very crucial for our job, because as soon as as soon as there's an impact, we know about it. And my system basically takes the information of all the radars in Baghdad, and anything with enough velocity, enough arc is going to show up, even bullets. When people, just have celebratory fire with AK-47s, I'll see that on my screen, but it'll be a very small, distance from point A to point B. If I see something that's covering 7 or 9 kilometers, then obviously that's a projectile explosive, and so I can determine by speed and by distance what it is, whether it's a rocket, mortar, rocket-propelled grenade. Just depends on what it is. So again, as soon as the first one impacts, their last one's probably getting dropped, because they would drop them in succession. So they 3 or 4 bursts, high arc. So by the first one lands, that last one's getting dropped in. So there's 3 more coming after that. Hypothetically. So our job is to get that location of the point of origin relayed to the whatever the nearest Apache is, H-64, and have them engage that target. Now, if there's nobody close, then we can pass it off to the guns, see if But there really isn't. There's no way to hit something right outside the gate, because 1, it's too short, and 2, there's too much collateral damage to use traditional artillery. I think we had 3 guns with 1st Brigade, 1st Cav Division, and they were all Paladins, which is they are tracked vehicles that fire 155 millimeter artillery rounds. They have a collateral damage estimate of 400 meters radius. So you're not going to be able to hit anything along a major route, knowing that 1, you're going to injure and kill innocent civilians who are traveling that road. 2, you're going to mess up some U.S. forces, because you're going to take out this area. So rotary wing assets were the best to use for situations like that. There was, I guess the memorable moment was we were there for about, I'd say 3 months in, and we had someone just like that fire some mortars inside the gate, and they didn't hit anything. They missed, everything entirely. They overshot the airfield and everything, so it didn't, cause any damage. But we had 2 H-64s that had just taken off. So when I relayed the position to them, say, hey, we have incoming. This is the grid right outside the gate. They were just taking off, and and we had an ISR asset, which is an unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV, fly around, basically a remote control camera that flies around so you can, monitor your area. We were able to pick up the feed from one of those, and it picked up the truck as it was speeding down the road. It was heading north on MSR Tampa. It was actually, by the time they got to it, it was further up here, about halfway from the distance of the base from north to south. So they picked it up. The H-64s have thermal imaging, so they saw that there was a, bright white hot cylinder in the bed of their truck leaving the point of origin with two passengers inside, and it was speeding down the dirt road because you could see the dust trail kick up. So we had the UAV, whatever, watching it, and I'm talking to the Apaches, and they are like, cool. They're like, yes, we see it. Clear to engage. I clear with my battle cats and clear to engage, and they hit it with a Hellfire round, and I got to watch that car just absolutely burst into flame and come to a halt on the side of the road. And that was affirming for me, because it was like, okay, we're not throwing, like I'm actually, it was affirming to me because it was like, okay, I have a purpose, I'm actually, able to do something to contribute, because like I said, I was kind of forced into the aviation support of it, and so it wasn't what I, thought I originally wanted to do. But after being able to support that, and also being able to call in that kind of stuff for some of my buddies that were on the ground, definitely made the rest of the deployment more inspiring. It was that was my motivational moment, and to know that hey, those two guys aren't going to come back and try and kill me or any of my buddies, or damage any equipment. And so if those are two bad guys gone, then done my job.
You said you had to get you specialized in your job, you had to learn airframes, what can handle what. You deal mostly with Apaches. Is this the correct one?
Correct. The Apaches are the only ones that actually have any kind of fire support. 864 Delta. Delta just means that it has the radar here, and there's normally a radar up top, so that's the one up top is never really used in country because it's only meant for air-to-air defense, and there's no other air threats in Iraq, so there's no need to have air-to-air radar. But yeah, you can have usually two pods on each side. This cylinder here, if it's a cylinder, that means it's a rocket cylinder, so it can fire up to 14 rockets, whether they be HE, which is high explosives, or flechettes, which is basically 1,000 little tiny nails that burst 10 meters above the ground. So it'll go, and before it hits the ground, it'll just basically throw nails at whatever's down there. So it's good for like groups, if you have a group of people, in a pretty broad pattern, or you have a lot of concealment, or just to even create distractions. And you don't want to use a $900 Hellfire rocket. You can fire one of those and kick up some dust, or at least wound a group of people. You're not going to kill them all, more than likely. It's just going to wound them. But that way ground forces can come in and capture them and detain them. Because you don't always need to kill everybody. But yeah, so that's the rocket pod. The other, probably hopefully on the other side, would be Hellfire rockets, which there's so many different nominations. The most popular model is November, which is just a HE, high explosive round.
How big are these things?
About 3.5 feet long. So I'd say 8-inch diameter. Roughly, yeah. I mean, it's it's like a leg. Think of it like about the size of a human leg. They fire with reasonable accuracy. There's anything that's rocket propelled is going to have some error. I mean, when you see them fired, they kind of do some squiggly stuff, but as long as you have a good laze on the target, you can put them through a window. You know, it just depends on the grid and the pilot's accuracy and whether he's moving or, you know, stationary. But the Kilo model is my favorite because it's a thermobaric, which is thermo meaning heat, baric overpressure. So it'll explode and then like suck all the oxygen out of a room through the overpressure. So even if it doesn't hit you, it can still suck the lungs out of your chest at like 50 meters. Yeah, they're expensive. So yeah, they're really good for like hardened buildings and stuff because you're not going to be able to do much. Just, you know, throwing some rockets and missiles, you know, some small missiles like that at a hardened building. But if you can get one inside, it's gonna damage everybody.
And there's 2 pilots, correct?
Correct. You have a basically a navigator, who's, you know, the one actually controlling the bird, and then you have a gunner who's controlling the weapon systems. That's a 30 millimeter machine gun, by the way. I forgot to mention that. That's sexy.
How far away can they take that? What's the accuracy on the 30 mil and the rest of the weapons?
I'm not sure about the 30 millimeter, only because it's really, I mean, nothing that we're involved with, because we don't give a grid for them to shoot a machine gun at. You know, you give a grid for them to shoot a missile at. But I've seen them knock them down from a couple kilometers. Not with much accuracy with a 30 millimeter, but I mean enough to where they'll auto guide. I mean they'll actually zero themselves. So you pick a point and shoot, and the computer in those things will figure out how far, you know, off it is, and then adjust itself. So that way, from now on, whatever's in that crosshair is getting taken out. They'll go and do that, you know, usually when they take off, they'll go out to, you know, closer to Syria and just in the middle of the desert where there's nothing to, you know, to harm or, you know, destroy, and zero their weapons, you know, if they have time. If not, I mean, most of these birds go on back-to-back flights. They don't have a lot of downtime because you have pilots in constant rotation, because you have to have support 24 hours a day. But yeah, I know those are cool because you can fire at something as simple as down an alleyway. I mean, I've seen them do it. To be able to hover to the side, people like to run behind buildings, especially in the urban environment of Baghdad. Well, like I said, Cider City, 3 million people. There's there's a lot of places to hide in any urban environment, and you know that's what makes this war different than some of the wars of the past. Is, you know, it's the first full-scale urban war. Cider City right here, basically, this square right here has 3 million people, an insane amount of people, and so, you know, per area it had the most violence, probably because of that fact, but also because it was just so heavily guarded. It seems like everybody and their mother had guns and mortars and stuff, versus like you get closer to the river, especially down south, you had more, you know, I don't know, I guess, I won't say peacefulness, I mean just more docile, I think it would be the word. Manipulatable. I probably just made that word up. I don't know how to, but this is what basically from here, all the way over to Fog Liberty was the majority of the violence, and it's because you have 2 opposite religions who hate each other for thousands of years, and they live together. And to them, it's okay to kill each other because of that fact. So, you know, this is an aside, but people ask me, you know, when I got back, they're like, "Oh, you think the war, you know, think the violence is going to stop now that we're there?" No, it's been going on for 2,000 years. Guess what? Us being there for a decade, not going to stop it. I mean, you know, we didn't go there to keep them from killing each other. We went there to get one guy from killing a whole bunch of people. You know, it was genocide. That was happening. You know, and it's happened once. Let's, you know, not let it get out of control. people are scared to walk in the streets, and now they're not. So I don't know. This is the majority of my area of operation, because this is where all the people were at, and there was, you know, a lot of U.S. targets right at the Capitol here, because this was considered the green zone. So you had the U.S. Embassy here, which was one of Saddam's old palaces, which is huge. So there's a lot of U.S. government officials there. And then over near Liberty, which I can't tell where it is on this map. Yes, I can. Here you go. This is it's that big airfield. That's Baghdad International Airport. We took that over, and that's how pretty much everybody would fly in. That was VIPs and stuff. Most of the soldiers had to fly into an air base far north and then get helicoptered in here, or they would just drive down. But it was a heck of a trip. That's one thing I will say, that being, working for aviation, we didn't have to drive anywhere. So knowing the number of IEDs and stuff that happened, I think that was probably a safe bet. So, one of the other things that made me not regret being attached to 1st Air Cav. But yeah, there's so much operations stuff there. People were always trying to hit it and blow up helicopters, planes, or just hit any kind of, VIPs coming in and out. But yeah, those two areas were definitely had huge targets on their back, so to speak.
So where was the palace again? Is that
The palace was like in the Capitol. If you zoom in, let's see. Okay, hold on, slow down. That's the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. That means that's the Cross Sabers, which means that. All right, hold on. Okay, come here. It's right along this road. You turn right, and that's got to be it. It's the biggest thing out there. So, hold on. There it is, the big blue dome. This was the home of the embassy. This was one of his palaces, which literally is, just insanely massive. Got to walk around and inside it for a little while. But yeah, that was one of his areas that we took over. But this was considered the green zone. This is where it was supposedly safe, and to walk around and all that good stuff. If you scroll back over here, just the major monuments. That's tag that as green zone. That's actually the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and this was the parade field. You can't see it here because it's aerial, but right here and right here, the entrance to the parade field, there were two hands holding swords, and we called them the Cross Sabers. They were both right hands, and they're supposedly modeled after Saddam's hand. That's always a kind of picturesque area, but that was one of the major geographical identifiers for everybody who operated in Baghdad.
So basically your area's operation was protecting the base, but it was also the city guiding.
Yeah, where anything, literally any indirect fire that happened to where our artillery guns could not fire upon, we were called to get them to go, and we tried to take precedence most of the time because, one, we have our guys and up in the air, so if they're not in support of of other troops on the ground, let them get there, because they're going to be more accurate than you firing a missile from a couple thousand kilometers away, or a couple thousand meters away. So yeah, we got calls from everybody, or I literally had a radar covering everything you see on that screen.
So inside the base you had the projectile detectors around the wall, but here you're just mostly relying on the UAVs, or what was?
No, there's on top of buildings, there are 90-degree array radars. So let's say this Capitol, right here, I probably was a building here with all the radars, but So you have a 90-degree fan that covers out all over here. Well, there's 4 of those. So you have, each sector here. Well, then, those are on the main ones were Q46 and Q47s. I honestly forget which one had the greater distance right now. But you had some that had, really long reach as far as radar, and some that were shorter because they were smaller units, and they were placed all over. And they would move from time to time depending on kind of where the hot spots were. So if you say, or if I'm getting reports that, hey, right along like this river, we're getting a lot of indirect fire coming at the green zone, or firing over the base, or going into this Sunni neighborhood because it's a Shia neighborhood and they're shooting across the river. Okay, well, if we already have one kind of pointed there, let's have a small one also, and kind of double tap that area, so that way, because anything electronic has inadequacies. So anytime you can have multiple layers and multiple radars on an area, you're going to have more confirmed sightings and just better data, so to speak. The bad thing is though, you can't have radar over an entire country, so you do have to pick and choose kind of where you want those radars pointed and so on and so forth. So they moved around, a bit, just as far as which direction they were facing from time to time. But there was enough large. It had to be Q47, and to where we had most of the ground covered.
Are you talking about the Q-47s there? Are those mounted vehicles, or are those...
No, the Q-47 is a towable radar. You can tow it behind a large truck, and it looks almost like just a flatbed. But then it's once you park it, you stand it upright, and it's just a giant rectangle of radars, and you point it in one direction. That is it. Yes, that one's actually on a truck. So yeah, you have there's fixed ones that you can in place and leave behind. But yeah, so that giant area of radar will reach out a couple thousand kilometers in a 90-degree fan.
Did you ever actually get to choose were you ever in charge? Say, I'm not getting enough coverage of this area. It's not accuracy. Were you ever responsible for any placement?
We didn't get to choose the placement because that was someone's specific job. But we did advise, commanders and colonels, generals, however high it went up to, because we had weekly meetings with our colonel, who then had meetings with his bosses and higher ups. So if I come to him and saying, hey, we're getting shot at on our airfield, from this area, and I only have one radar covering it, we got hit 5 times, only got 4 of them, that's 20% loss of indirects that we're not getting. So, we need to have at least one other radar dedicated, to this area, because either they're shooting far enough away to where it's not picking it up, or they're shooting close enough at enough high angle to where it's not staying in the radar fan for long enough to register. So there's a couple different, ways that, because if it's really far away and they're shooting low angle, well, it can go underneath, because you have to, point it up to a certain degree to, get stuff coming in. So think of it like a radar detector in a car, You can see the cop, and it might not pick it up until, after you've seen him for a couple seconds. Or you might get a beep, and wonder what that is, and then come over a hill and then get him. So it just depends, Radar is not a precise game, so to speak. But yeah, those were the tools that, that helped us out in doing our job.
And how fast were the response time if you were to advise, or if anybody were to request movement of radar? How long does that take? I guess from the point of request to when it actually gets picked up and moved.
At least a day, usually, just because I have to pass through so many hands and PowerPoint presentations and so on and so forth. Because I usually only moved them like once or twice a week. But if you made a request to get something dedicated, someone can go out there and do it. But usually they would, if you had something moved, they'd let it sit there for whatever time period that you requested, and usually it was about a week, just to cover your bases and see if there was an activity increase or decrease, or however it happened to be. but response time for the actual electronics were usually pretty good. I'd say within 10 or 15 seconds of of it, actually receiving that, I would get the information and try and get, I think ideally you're able to call for fire in about 90 seconds. So it's just a matter of identifying, where it's coming from, clearing it, with whoever the ground commander is, and, obviously saying, okay, we actually have a threat, positive identification. So, this is, this is a rocket from this point, not, somebody just sprayed some AK fire in the air.
Can you go through the process? Because I'm assuming you're the first person that goes through.
Mm-hmm.
So for after you, what is the transition to before somebody finally pulls the trigger?
Okay, so as soon as the radar hits, had the projectile, whether it be a rocket or a mortar, it uses the data to create a point of origin and a point of impact, and it also gives me speed on data, gives me data on speed, as well as possible types, because there's calculations. Okay, if it's traveling at this speed, then it's rocket propelled, and if it's going at this length, it's one of these types. So it'll kind of give me a choice, or some ideas to choose from. But so I digress. So when that happens, I get a point of origin and a point of impact on my screen. It's a red line on a map just like this, and usually there's multiples, so it'd be point of origin, and it'd be point of impact, point of impact, point of impact. So you see kind of the variance, but you have that same point of origin. That someone's firing something from there for sure. That's kind of a if it happens 3 times and you have multiple radars lock onto it, that's enough for positive identification. So as soon as I get that, I would yell attention to the talk. We have incoming, or we have impact at grid, Mike Bravo, yada yada yada.
You say you're yelling that in the room.
Yeah.
You have CA.
When I do that, it doesn't matter what's going on. Everyone has to shut up when I do that, because that's an immediate, okay, stop what you're doing. Let's action on this. So we have RTOs up front. They figure out the location of basically every helicopter. I mean, which they should know already because they have to check in so often. But basically, get it. Say okay, Crazy Horse, which is a call sign for one of our companies. They were like, they're in the area. So I'm like, cool. So they say send it. So I say, basically Crazy Horse 1-4. This is Warrior. That was our call sign. I forget whatever new numerical attachment we had for it. We have mortar fire, rocket, or incoming rocket, incoming mortar, point of origin, grid. Send it. They fly over to that grid because they'll plug it in their navigation computer, fly over there, which they move at 200 miles an hour, so you can get to most places pretty quick. And as soon as they get within sight, they're already scanning, because they have their little grid or whatever, so they can kind of see, okay, all right, Roger, I see a team, I see 4 guys in the middle of a soccer field, with a rocket, tube. Okay, so that's positive identification. You clear to engage, and then no more bad guys. So ideally, that takes 90 seconds. Sometimes it would take 3 to 5 minutes. And unfortunately, in 35 minutes, it's really easy for bad guys to get away. So a lot of our success depended upon response time. A lot of it's luck, a lot of it's just kind of going through the motions enough to where you get the process down. So, and if you have someone near, awesome. If you don't, then send it to the big guns, and see if, as long as there's nothing in the area, like a soccer field that's away from everybody, and there's hey, blow it up.
So in a room of how many people, you're literally the first person out of. What was the work environment in general?
It was the TOC, which is a TOC. It's a Tactical Operations Center. Varies in size depending on unit. I mean, brigades looked like a movie. It was about like the size of a movie theater. Divisions was the size of a movie theater. Our brigade was, I'd say, the size of a normal classroom. We had four rows of varying elevation, so that everyone could see the front screen, because we had basically a main map projected on to the front wall, so everyone could say, okay, hey, this is going on right here. Put a grid, create an action sequence, and or you could just look and be like, okay, it's here, and have something visually to look at. But we had, let's see, 4 RTOs, our RTO is radio or telephone operator. I'd say 15 people, usually on a day shift. It goes down to about 9 or 10 at night, because there's less action, because the enemy sleeps too. But yeah, about 15 people. It's a process to where it is important, but frustrating, because if I get the intel and I know we have somebody up, and the process doesn't go through and he gets away, it sucks. So like, shit, he's gonna come back and shoot at me probably tomorrow. And let's just hope he doesn't hit anything again. But let's hope he doesn't have some kind of connection within the base to tell him, oh hey, you were you missed it by this much, so that way they can learn to adjust, because they can do math. They're not idiots. It's not we're fighting people who are literally from the Stone Age. It just looks like that. If you go to their living conditions, it looks like they're from the Stone Age, because they have mud huts, but their mud huts have satellite dishes on the side. So guess what? They're watching CNN too. And after they go, and throw some rockets over, they're going to watch CNN, because they're going to be the first people. Oh, 8 people died today in this district of Iraq. Cool, that worked. I'm going to go there and shoot there every day, because whatever I have is working. So, a frustrating fact.
Well, so being inside the base is, as that's just the general chatter, which you come to find out when you get there, just through absorption of what around you, or how do you? Because I'm assuming you didn't really leave the base that much.
Not operationally. The times I left the base were basically like to just go visit some buddies, or for R&R, or which is rest and relaxation. They allow you to go to like Qatar for a couple of days. But yeah, I didn't get to that. I wasn't driving around downtown in Humvees or kicking indoors or anything.
What do you actually do for R&R?
They sent us, well, they gave us an option. They said you can go to the green zone, which we just discussed gets mortared, or you can go to Qatar, which is another country, way south. And I was like, yeah, I'll go to Qatar. Thank you. I'm not gonna. How much am I really gonna rest and relax, still hearing mortar fire? That's not gonna happen. So they they allowed people to go to Qatar for, I think it was 3 days, and it was nice because it's mandatory. You cannot wear a uniform. You have to wear civvies. If you don't have civilian clothes, they'll provide them for you. They have like a little rental closet thing. You just take some, put them back, and you're done. They wash them, launder them. But that was nice, because it kind of broke up the year of 2007 for me, because I took my leave in December of 2006, so I just kind of lucked out and was able to get home for Christmas. But I mean,
so Qatar is on the tip of the Arabian Peninsula.
See, which we were not allowed. We went to the ocean, but we weren't allowed to go in the water, because that was right around the time that some people got kidnapped, and there's legitimate pirates out there, like modern day pirates. I don't remember when the Navy had to go and rescue that some guy because their tanker or whatever got seized. But it was like, you know, little stuff like that. People get robbed on the water all the time, and they were just like, don't go in the water because we don't really know we don't really know enough to form a threat assessment. So they're just like, we're supposed to go on jet skis and stuff. And they're like, that's not gonna happen, you know. But you were able to go and kind of ride around the sand dunes with, you know, other drivers and stuff. You can go to the malls if you wanted to, but we pretty much just stayed on the base in Qatar and went to the pool, laid out, ate at they have a Chili's restaurant on there. So it was nice to be, you know, even though you're still in a desert environment, you're so far removed from the fighting. It really is, I mean, feels like a 2-week vacation and you're gone for 2-3 days.
All right, well, you ready to move on to your pictures?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to go in the order that you put them up.
This was Qatar. I'm sorry, this was Kuwait airfield. This was where we had stopped to refuel and fly out to Al Asad because we'd flown from Texas to Maine, Maine to Germany, and Germany to Kuwait. And this is leaving Kuwait. We were about to get on that C-17 right there behind me, with all of our duffel bags and stuff in there, and they had like, the C-17s are just massive cargo planes that the Air Force flies, and actually out of South Carolina, and they have like legitimate like airplane seats, just like that clip in to the, you know, out of the middle section, so you can fit, you know, a couple hundred soldiers in there. It was pretty cool, but we'd already done our test fire and stuff because you have your familiarization fire when you get to Kuwait, and then we left. This is Camp Taji Airfield. This was dusk. There's another. You're not allowed to have head cover on the airfield because of the rotors and stuff. It can get blown off and then sucked into an engine, which would be very expensive. So that's why I'm not wearing headgear outside for all you Army people that, you know, might see this. This is a UH-60. This is the main transport helicopter that we used. They do have fire capabilities as far as they have a machine gun mounted on the side, but that's mainly just for defensive fire. They're not going to attack anybody with a UH-60. We use those for medical transports. We use those for infills, as far as if you're putting if you have to put a team on the ground in a remote location, like, you know, in a field next to a house that they're about to go raid or something, you can drop in there and fit a bunch of guys on. They get off really quickly because they're trained and fly off with that, but we use those that's also what I rode to fly around Baghdad between Camp Prosperity, Green Zone, and Liberty. That's the sexy one right there, H-64 Apache. Getting refueled, re-armored, all that good stuff. Signs on the Humvees say danger, stay back in Arabic, and what you can't see is this is a gunner's hatch up here with a kind of a camo cover, but there were multiple signs, some of which we had to change as rules of engagement changed, because some were like stay back 50 feet or you will be shot at, and towards the end of the deployment they had to take those down because we weren't allowed to shoot at them for coming close to us anymore, which is, I mean, dangerous for people who are out there driving every day, because it's easier for, you know, a vehicle-worn IED to get close to you and blow you up. But it was part of winning hearts and minds, you know. If you keep shooting the hoods of cars or people that come close to you, they're not going to want to work with you, and they're not going to want to work for you. So, just an idea. That's the view from a UH-60. Just few miles north of Taji. This route actually right here is the one I showed you earlier. This is MSR Tampa after it, goes to a crap road, but there's little tiny villages, and they have literally like farms of palm groves where they grow and sell the trees. Because I don't know if you know, but there's no palm trees native to America. They're all shipped in. And this is interesting because it shows how much you can hide here. We had a lot of fire from areas like this, just massive palm groves. I mean, as far as the eye can see, areas west of our base, and people would shoot from those all the time because you couldn't see them. And so, I mean, if you're trying to send ground troops out there, they're not going to find a person amongst all that stuff. It was even hard for the helicopters to see them with thermals because if it's daytime, everything's hot. The ground's hot. So your body temperature isn't that much cooler than the ground temperature when it's 127 degrees out. So you can essentially camouflage yourself entirely. Nighttime is when the thermals mainly help, even over MEGs, because body heat versus cold ground, because it gets so cold at night in the desert. But it's really not that desert-like, that's just kind of the view of Baghdad. People think it's going to be like, it's, oh, you're fighting in the desert, and it's going to be all desert, because that's what the pictures I see. No, it's actually, there's roads, there's buildings, there's, there's professional irrigation. So there's just, I wanted to show you this so you can kind of see the area of Baghdad and kind of how it's different than the urban environment that I talked about earlier, just by being a couple hundred miles north. This was a passenger vehicle that got damaged because a rocket hit it. The concrete barriers you see here are meant to protect the buildings behind it, which are just trailers, single-wide trailers split up into 3 sections to create rooms. Each room had 2 beds. That's how you bunked. So they got pretty close. When you're in your bunk and you hear the crack of mortars and rockets exploding, you just kind of either roll on the floor because you have sandbags all up the side of your room, and that helps protect, or you just kind of just close your eyes and cross your fingers. But yeah, they landed several mortars and rockets right outside the rooms several times, and this window wasn't even damaged by shrapnel. This day was just like this glass broke because of the concussion of the impact. Go to the next one. This is shrapnel. Here you can see the importance of having up-armored Humvees, which they decided to implement in like 2006, thankfully, because the people that I was deployed with who were there in 04 were like, oh, we were rolling soft skin, we were rolling out there with no doors, and if that happens to you with no doors, everyone's dead. So it was a major overhaul, which cost, I'm sure, the government way too much money, but they changed over all the Humvees to up armor. So they armored the sides, had the 4-inch thick bulletproof glass. They armored the flooring to help prevent against IEDs, which can still only do so much. But you can see just pepper sprayed everything. That was one a little bit farther away, but yeah, that's kind of, you can kind of see some of the damage that the incoming mortars and rockets do, and why they're able to kill so many people. This is the embassy, one of Saddam's old palaces that I was telling you about. I was able to go down there for a day trip because one of my buddies that I went to basic with, he was at FOB Prosperity, which was just past the parade field that I showed you. And so I landed at the little airfield that was nearby, walked there, and kind of just made my own little tour. Surprising how freely you can walk around in those areas. But it's massive. I mean, that shows you probably a quarter of how big it is, and that's just from me on a balcony out front. But it was pretty cool to be in Styles Palace. One of them. That's impact from one of the mortars that hit. And one of the things that's tough is because when you have hard clay like this, what we have to do is figure out also, one, pick up the shrapnel to figure out what it was. Because if we can figure out what kind of mortar it was, we can figure out where it came from. Whether it be from Chinese or made, or if it was Russian made, or Pakistani, or surplus U.S. that, some stuff that we gave, to Afghanistan 20 years ago. There's a huge assortment of stuff. We have been hit with our own stuff sometimes. They'd, find caches, but we were able to piece together the parts, look at fins to determine the size, where it came from, which helps, the military intelligence people kind of with some of their actions. Also, you can tell which direction it came from, so if it didn't show up on radar, you can figure out, okay, well, if it impacted, let's say it impacted at this angle, well, the spray is actually going to come back at you from when it blows up. So wherever the fan of, let's see, kind of a burnt area, which is really tough to tell on this photo, but if you see that kind of 45-degree backblast area, find the center of it and get basically a compass reading for which direction it is, that we can draw on a map. And once you find out what kind of mortar it is and how far they fly, you have an approximate distance of where it came from and on that line. So, if there's only one building in that line, because it's a deserted area, then guess what? Someone's going to go knocking on your door. Or we can, go ahead and find out, just a grid location. If it's, it's just a random field on the side of the road, or if it's just a road, go ahead and get a grid location so we know to check that out on people doing their routes. Like when, there's not always something going on, but there's always somebody flying around. So some of their stuff, some of pilots' task is just to observe and monitor. So hey, I have to go and check on this grid and kind of see what's going on. If it happens more than once, if we're getting hit from multiple areas, like from one area multiple times, and it's not showing up on radars, or we're not able to catch the bad guys, hey, every time you fly around that grid, light it up, shoot it. Just, a couple hundred rounds of 30 millimeter high explosive. Do that every day for a week. They stop firing. It's just deterrence. You can psychologically affect people by actions such as that. So if they have an area that they feel that they're comfortable and zeroed in on because they're hitting right next to where troops sleep, find out where it is, shoot it every day. Guess what? They're not going to keep shooting there because they know So they're like, oh crap, we got to find a new place, which means a whole nother month or two of calculations and figuring out what works and what doesn't. Don't let them get good at what they do. Be better at what you do. So, if they're always guessing, cool. They can't see what they're hitting. So it's going to be harder for them. We can. But part of the job. That just got shredded. That was a different day too. That was I think there was actually somebody injured in this simply because this was outside of this was near a freaking gym or something, and somebody caught some shrapnel in the leg from this one. You see people in PT shorts and stuff just walking around outside because they're probably coming from the gym. I'm pretty sure this one was there. So that's it's part of the issue is that no matter what you're doing, you're always at risk of getting shot at. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying anything less about people who kick indoors and stuff, but at least you're always on the offensive. If you're just walking back to your room from work, or you're going to the gym, and all of a sudden it happens. Hey man, that's your time. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. This is myself in a M1 Abrams tank. just riding around with actually one of the guys that I met in Qatar on our little R&R, and he invited me to come out there and ride in a tank with him, because I'd never ridden in a tank. So he was like, "Hey, you want to come for us?" Absolutely. And that was, kind of exciting. Got to drive it a little bit. I won't give his name because I won't want him to get in trouble because I didn't have a license for one. But that was just a nice, relaxing day. October '07. That was a couple months before I came home.
All right, that's the last of your photos. All right. We're gonna. So, when did you leave? When was the day you got in, the day you left?
I got into Iraq on October 3rd, 2006, and I left on December 22nd, 2007.
And so you were gone for that long, and you got home. Where'd you fly into? What was it like when you got the minute you got home? What'd you do? After you got home, the first thing you did you have like a checklist of what you want to get done as soon as you get home, or did you just want to go pass out?
I just wanted to not be in my uniform. I took leave, because you're allowed to take, a leave while you're overseas to split up the deployment so it's not so long, because, when you're over there for 15 months, they kind of give you some kind of reset time period. Except I wanted to come home for my birthday in August of 2007. Well, that got denied. Because they kind of created a wish list when we first got there, so they could start scheduling people's leaves and stuff. And so I was like, well, you know what? How about Christmas? And they're like, that's in 2 months. And I was like, yep. How about that? Will it work? And they're like, sure. No one wants to take that because it's so soon. And I was like, you're going to be here for another 9 months after that, because we're supposed to deploy for a year. And I was like, it is what it is. I'll go. At least I'll get to actually see family and stuff. People won't be working. So I went home for Christmas in 2006. And then we were counting down the days, and I think it was August, and okay, we got 35 days left. We'll be going home soon. And then we found out on CNN that we were getting extended for another 3 months.
Not through the CO.
Not through the CO or not through our brigade commander. No, we found out through CNN that the 1st Cav Division was getting extended, and then then later that day, it actually got put out to everybody, hey, we're getting extended for another 3 months. And we're son of a, come on, we already had a countdown going. So it was another 90 days to tack that on. And then people just stopped counting. Because once you're down to 35, you can't be 124. No, it's just no, we're not counting anymore. Screw it. Because they'll just extend us again. And it's definitely a morale killer. At that point, you've been doing it for so long, you don't care as much. I wasn't married and didn't have any kids. Had a fiance, but that was, I guess it's also what you have behind, which is kind of, some of the big stressors. She understood what I was doing. She knew it. She was comfortable with it. It was supportive. We communicated, enough, and it wasn't that big of a deal. I bet if I had kids, though, or if she was pregnant and I was going to miss the birth of my child, I'd have probably flipped out, and yeah, just imagining that, I could see a whole new gain of aggression growing. But so then we got extended, came back December 22nd, and flew into Fort Hood. Had to do our little in-processing as, actually at the airfield, or airport once I got off the airfield, and just wait because they were going to bus us to the parade field of Fort Hood. And we're like, okay, you know what, at least I'm in America, but it's come on, let's go. I don't want to be here, sitting around an airport, just, why aren't the buses already here, yada, yada, yada. So everyone's kind of anxious, but then the buses come, we get on the buses, they take you to the parade field. They shut down the road on that part of base, so they have all the buses kind of back to back or front to back, whatever, and you get out and then you form up, into just a mass formation, and then march onto the parade field. And it's cool because you have like under the stands and stuff where of the parade field you have the family members and all that stuff, and they're cheering and have signs and stuff, welcome home, welcome home. So get front, they say a couple words, thank you for your service, thank you to the family members for supporting your soldiers, da 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 da, and you're released. So then, you just kind of pick out whoever is yours, whoever you're related to or attached to in that crowd. Went to them, big hug and kiss, went home. I say home, it was my new home. My fiance had rented a place. She actually rented a place. And it was a little apartment, planning on me coming back when I was supposed to, but then we got extended, so then her lease ran out, and then she had to rent a house, so I never even saw that in the first place. But so she had rented a house, which was a lot better than the little crappy apartment she told me, but it was cool because it was a 3-bedroom house, so me and my buddies had a place to crash, we could all split the rent, and made it cheap. But we got back and we just got hammered drunk. Like, it was, I had one of my buddies, Chris from 1st Brigade, he got back 3 or 4 days before me, I think it was, and so I don't think he missed a bottle. He had so much liquor and beer there. When I showed up, it was just whatever you want, and I was just like, thank you, I haven't drank in so long. I lasted probably an hour, maybe 2. I met people for the first time while throwing up into a toilet. They ended up becoming good friends and all, but yeah, that's pretty much the first thing everyone does, at least, when you're 21, 22, and you get back from a year overseas. It's like, yeah, let's party, let's get hammered drunk and forget. Let me just erase, whatever I can. And that's kind of just what we did for the next couple of months.
How old were you when you left for basic, I guess, until the time and how old were you when you got back that day? Just age.
I was 21 when I left for basic. That's part of the reason why I delayed the my date, because there were when I first signed up, it was in April of 2005, and I turned 21 in August, and they were like, "Oh, what's this?" I was like, "I'm not turning 21 in basic training." I was like, well, "When's the next day?" "Well, we don't have one until I was like, "Can you send me after August 6th? I'll go any day after August 6th." And they're like, "Well, we have on August 24th." I was like, "Sold. That's the basic training I'm going to." So yeah, I was 21 when I went in, and everything really works out for a reason because I met some of the greatest friends that I'll ever have in my life at that basic training camp. 3 of them were in my wedding, so good guys. I was 21 then, and I was 22 when we deployed, and then 23 when I got back. So it was, I had about 4 months of actually, enjoying 21 as this